So in an op-ed for The Hill yesterday, former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton wrote, quote, "Killing Navalny is evidence that Putin feels back on top, confident in his rule, untroubled about either domestic or international pushback." And Ambassador John Bolton joins us now. Ambassador, thank you for being with us. You know, moments ago, we saw pictures of Alexei Navalny's mother outside the Siberian prison where Navalny died, pleading for the release of the body of Alexei Navalny. What do you read in to the reluctance or failure of Russia to turn the body over?
Well, quite likely they tried again with poison, maybe even using Novichok again, which didn't work the first time, and they're waiting for the evidence of the poisoning to dissipate so it's not subject to uncovering during an autopsy. Look, these are very cold-blooded people. This doesn't bother them, and despite some demonstrations inside Russia, which have been quickly swept up by the police, I think Putin's domestic position, with Navalny gone, with Prigozhin gone, with elections coming in a few weeks he's sure to win, he feels very much in control.
We read a quote from your op-ed where you say he's untroubled by domestic opposition or international pushback. What does he see in the United States, specifically in the U.S. Congress, that makes him so untroubled?
Well, I think Congress is not acting in the national interest at this point, not being able to get aid for Ukraine, not being able to get aid for Taiwan, aid for Israel, funding and policy changes on the southern border. And he sees Donald Trump looming in the background. And right at the moment, he sees Joe Biden in the White House, who threatened severe consequences for Russia several years ago when Navalny returned to Russia and was immediately imprisoned. And yet we haven't seen any severe consequences. And I would say the same is true for Western European leaders. You know, we're all very good at expressing outrage, but when it comes to doing something about it, I think Putin is not so worried.
Liz Cheney referred to certain members of Congress as the Putin caucus. What do you think of that assessment?
Well, look, I think it's objectively supportive of Russia not to provide assistance to Ukraine. And part of the problem here in both parties, frankly, is we haven't had leaders in recent years who explain what the benefit to the United States of NATO is. We're not providing these resources to Ukraine out of charity. We're doing it because it's in our national self-interest to do it. And yet President Biden, for example, has not made that case. He talks about authoritarianism versus democracy, which I think is relatively uninteresting to most people. And Republicans haven't been able to explain concretely why peace and stability in Europe benefit the United States.
What happens if Mike Johnson doesn't allow a vote on Ukraine aid? Who wins?
Well, I think Russia wins, clearly. You know, this is something that there once was a time when we liked bipartisanship in foreign policy. I never thought the Democrats were as strong as they should be, but we did have some evidence of bipartisanship, and I'm afraid we're on the verge of losing it. I think worse, I think the isolationist virus is loose generally, and particularly in the Republican Party. It's a big problem.
What do you think Donald Trump knows about Alexei Navalny? How much?
Well, I suspect very little. I don't recall from my tenure that there was a conversation about him. Navalny was poisoned in 2020, which is when he really came to Trump's attention for the first time. And when asked whether he thought the Russian government was responsible then in 2020, the President of the United States, with full access to the best intelligence collection in the world, said he didn't have enough information. So I don't think he's going to say anything negative about Putin. In fact, the only thing he said about Navalny is trying to compare himself to Navalny as a victim of a fixed judicial system, which is be hilarious if it weren't so dangerous.
Again, so you don't think he cares one way or the other if what happens or what happened to Alexei Navalny?
What Donald Trump cares about is what benefits Donald Trump. So when people look for policy ramifications from what he says or doesn't say, they're looking in the wrong direction. If he thought condemning Navalny would help him, he would do it. And if he doesn't think it brings him any benefit, he'll remain silent.
So the New York Times this morning published some of Alexei Navalny's letters from prison. And I'm going to read you something from the New York Times, said Mr. Navalny confided that the electoral agenda for former U.S. President Donald J. Trump looked, quote, really scary. It says Trump will become president should President Biden's health suffer, Mr. Navalny wrote from his high-security prison cell. Doesn't this obvious thing concern the Democrats? Let's take that into parts. President Donald Trump looked really scary. Why do you think that Trump looked so scary to Alexei Navalny?
Well, I think Trump has made it pretty clear he wants to withdraw from NATO, and I think that should be scary to anybody who worries about defeating Russian aggression, and not just in Ukraine, but really around Eastern Central Europe, Central Asia, and the prospects of growing linkage between Russia and China. A lot of people on the Republican side are defending Trump's rhetoric about NATO, saying he's just bargaining. All I can say is repeat, his intention is not to strengthen NATO, it's to weaken NATO and ultimately withdraw from it. And I hate to be proven right on this if Trump is elected, but I feel very confident that's what he wants to do. I consider that scary.
And I just wanted to also ask, because you mentioned that some of the protests have been put down inside Russia. We've spoken to so many people since Friday who hope that Alexei Navalny's death will somehow spur action, resistance inside Russia. It doesn't seem like you hold out much hope that his death won't be in vain.
Well, hope is not a strategy. I certainly wish the best for him, but a lot of the Democrats are in exile. You know, authoritarian regimes have a long record of success in human history in staying in power.
All right. Chilling analysis this morning. Ambassador John Bolton, we do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
As Trump's legal team works to remove Fulton County